of the illness. One might wonder if this still holds true up to now in 2008, baka and all. Even with the presence of a good number of psychiatrists in Iloilo, outside Metro Manila, Iloilo has the most number of psychiatrists. Dr. Margaret Querejero and our team here in Iloilo made a study of illness experience among Filipinos with depression in 2005, and they found that almost half of the respondents still consulted with indigenous healers. It is not unusual for a patient coming from Hong Kong or Dubai or the US or the Middle East who present with psychotic symptoms and who attribute it to hiwit or hex or hisa or envy. You can almost be sure that before they consult us, they have already gone to traditional healers. An exhaustive account of the Maarang practice with its ethno-medical system is discussed by Dr. Alice Magus in her book, The Enduring Maarang Tradition. And last October 2007, in our 9th monthly scientific meeting held here in Iloilo City, she read a paper on the Maarang entitled Babaylan or Shaman Calling, a Cultural Model or a Psychiatric Syndrome, which challenged us psychiatrists to think whether the Babaylan is someone pathological, diagnosable and treatable with the Western models or frameworks, or someone whom we as psychiatrists and other physicians can emulate in their techniques of treating patients. Overall, her work helped us acknowledge and accept openly and without shame what most of us grew up with, our traditional ways of healing. Dr. Wolfgang Gilek, in his chapter on traditional medicine relevant to psychiatry, said that the reasons for the preferential use of traditional medicine sources include three main aspects. The first one is that traditional medicine is culture congenial. Traditional practitioners are easily accessible, foster kinship and community cohesion, and they operate informally and without involving the authorities. And I would like to add, they don't charge very high. The alternative, second is the alternative is consulting traditional practitioners for mental health problems is not consulting anyone at all, as mental health professionals are not readily available. Iloilo is maswerte because there are more than 20 of us. But in other areas of the country, there are only about 500 psychiatrists to serve 80 million people. In many areas, the third one is that in many areas where adequate community mental health services have not been developed, psychiatric treatment is only available by removing the patient to remote or alien institutions, otherwise known as mental hospitals, where discharge may be delayed for reasons often unrelated to the patient's clinical condition. This erodes the kin-group relations, creates or increases social stigma, makes resocialization difficult, and may contribute to chronicity of the illness. The advantages of the traditional system seems to be the following. It is advantageous in the naming process, finding or defining the source of trouble and providing answers to vexing questions like, why am I afflicted? Why is our kin person afflicted? Traditional medicine has developed procedures that deal with and alleviate anxiety and guilt aroused by these questions in a culturally acceptable and understandable context. Contrast the concept of nabugnuhan sang kalag or malain nga ginhawa, or greeted by ancestral or malign spirits, with the concept of neurotransmitters of dopamine and schizophrenia. Which do you think will be understood by our people? Second, patients' feelings and experiences are restructured into a culturally validated system. The patient is provided with a language in which ineffable psychic states can be expressed and chaotic experiences recognized, thereby becoming intelligible and manageable. Once the problem is given an explanation and the offending agent, which are familiar to them, or acts are identified by the patient, like their their ancestors or their dead kins or the tamawos, no? He and his family and community have an opportunity to commit themselves together to the recommended remedial or protective action within a culturally sanctioned framework and to jointly involve themselves in the prescribed rituals or sacrificial offerings, which you have seen presented so beautifully by the people from Kalinga, that are conducive to the alleviation of individual and collective anxiety and guilt. Second is in traditional psychotherapies, which mainly include therapeutic suggestion, ritual symbolic procedures, altered states of consciousness, and catharsis, which involve manipulation of culturally validated symbols, working on the patient's affectivity to mobilize natural healing resources. A relational approach is utilized, which involves not only the patient, but also his family, his community, and ancestral spirits, forming a psychotherapeutic assembly, and this can foster kin and community cohesion. Third is the culture congeniality and holistic approach, which integrate cultural value systems of the patient and the physical, psychological, social, and spiritual